Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Power from the Ground, podcast of certain feminist voices on critical mineral and people power transition. I am Novita Indri from Train Asia, based in Jakarta, Indonesia. I will be hosting in this episode. In this series, we'll put front and center the voices of the peoples, communities, and feminists from the global south. We aim to unpack the critical mineral boom and the unequal system that driven it, especially in the face of the new trade agreement and global policies that claim to push a green transition. Is it really green? Yeah, uh, we will discuss further. Today, we are turning our attention to the role of the international financial institution like IMF, World Bank, ADB, AAB, and among others. These institutions present themselves as engine of development and sustainability, but their record show otherwise, as their program often entrench their dependence, impose neoliberal conditionals, and open the door to large extraction of the resources in global south. Like when we're talking about the critical mineral in global south, like we have a specific country that they are very rich with the critical mineral and some rare earth mineral, like in Brazil, Indonesia, Philippines, in South Africa, and among the African continents. But now this green transition as the labels is like getting more impacted. So today I'm not alone. I'm very honored to be joined with by our speakers today, all of who have been at the front of the resisting about the international finance institution, extractive policies, and advancing feminist alternative. So I will introducing Carola Mejía from LATINDADD and also Jiten Yumnam from Center of Research and Advocacy based in Manipur, India. Hi, Carola and Jiten, how are you?
Hi, Novita. Thank you so much for the invitation. We are fine.
Hi, Jiten. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining. Thank you so much for joining with us. So, can you start briefly introducing yourself and your work on this issue? I think I will start first as we talking about the front of the community and front defenders, right? So I think it's very good with starting with a very short, brief introduction. I think I will pass to Carola first.
I'm Carola Mejía. I am from Bolivia. I work as climate justice coordinator in LATINDADD, which is a Latin American network for economic, social, and climate justice. We have been working like 25 years following the work of international financial institutions, uh, a lot of work related to debt and how debt is a neocolonial instrument to condition our countries to export raw materials. And I have been working a lot on climate finance too. And we have been analyzing the quality of climate finance MDBs, for example, are giving. And we have a lot of criticism to that kind of process. And I will mention that later on when we continue the conversation. But we're also working a lot on just transition from the Global South perspective. So I hope I can also contribute with that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carola. And Jiten?
All right. Thank you very much. This is Jiten Yumnam again. We has been focusing on addressing these challenges of pursuing this energy projects and also extractive industry, especially in Manipur and also selected region across the northeast part of India. And we've been supporting and also working closely with many of the indigenous peoples and communities who are affected by the pursuits of large energy projects, like especially the pursuits of large hydropower project, and also series of mining projects and infrastructure that goes along with this kind of projects. So we've been supporting and working together with many of the indigenous peoples in our region. And another aspect that we also work very closely is also to address the impact of conflict, because our is a conflict affected situation, and We also focus on addressing the impact because the development aggregation, the issues of mining, the extractive industry, the push for this unsustainable energy. It also adds to the dimension of conflict and the violation of indigenous people's rights. Yeah. So yeah, and now the critical mineral, everything is all packaged as critical, in the critical minerals for climate solution, for sustainable development, and I think that's adding to more complexity in our region. So we're trying to respond in addressing this larger concern. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jiten and Carola, for your short, briefly introduction. I think both of you very comprehensive and very full package with the background, how you are conducting with the community and what you are focusing in this issue. And very happy to be host for this podcast with all of you. So I think like yeah, we starting the conversation and how we look at the critical mineral or this context as the sustainability things and how it's going well now, but now they are also triggering a more complexity issue. And but yeah, as we coming from the global south and also the government and under increasing pressure to supply the raw materials demanding to the energy transition, such as we can name it a couple specific minerals. It's like nickel, cobalt, lithium, copper, and some another rare earth materials. And also we see that how this financial institution they are has play a decisive role in shaping this extractive trajectory. We can see that through their loans, technical assistance, and sometimes policy advices, and any kind of the funding schema from the institution. They are trying to push the government to liberalization, meaning regime, weaken environmental and labor safeguard, and also prioritize the prepayment over social spending. This conditional of the structure adjustment and now repackaged as the resilient recovery or the green growth, as I think we very familiar with the same of definition coming from our government side or from the institution side, and how this is systematically privileged corporate investor while sidelining community. And also we know that a couple new policy coming from the like IMF, World Bank, ADB has historically they are funded mining, even though we know that they are still funding mining through their financial intermediary or through their indirect loans. And also how we see how they are funded in the mega infrastructure project that displace indigenous people, degraded ecosystem, and local economics in the raw mineral export dependence. So my first question that both of you, in what way are the international financial institutions such as the IMF or the World Bank driving new form of colonial extraction through critical minerals? I think I will start with Jitan first.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, I agree with you that the push for critical minerals with the tacit role of the international financial institutions is becoming very aggressive, and I think that is a very serious concern. This push is also in the context of promoting sustainable development, and also solving the climate crisis, and then also pushing for just energy transition and all the solutions, the green solution and whatever. So now they are pushing for the mining of critical minerals. So, for example, in the recently concluded the financing for development, the outcome document, it actually has a strong section on push for critical minerals, in the section on trade, and thereby, there is a strong, UN adopted resolution to push for critical minerals, and with the tacit role of the multilateral development banks, the IFI and this thing, so which means, which means the international financial institutions will play a stronger role, in financing and supporting the mining, the production, and all sort of supply works and all. No? So that is there, and I think that is in the context of sustainable development. And then another aspect that in extension to that is the Asian Development Bank, apart from the IMF and many other multilateral banks, the Asian Development Bank that operates primarily in Asia, now they are pushing for this energy policy, and also part of solving the climate crisis. And now they have the strong elements on the push for critical minerals as part of the energy solution and the climate solution. And I think that's a huge concern. And in fact, several indigenous peoples and several community organizations and civil society across Asia have raised strong objection to this kind of push for by the IFI. And finally, I also want to add a huge concern is also the deregulation of policies, the push for neoliberal agenda in a way how they are trying to liberalize policy. Like in the case of India, for example, now the push for the critical mineral mining is also associated with the deregulation of policy. And recently, there are a series of policy that provides more impetus to the corporations, multinational companies, more privilege. So, for critical mining, mining of critical minerals, so there will be no public hearing, there will be no environment impact assessment. So that's a new notification. So which means there is a complete deregulation of policy, and we're very, very worried with the kind of mining that's been pursuing for a long, long time, the violation of indigenous rights, the destruction of land resources, the contributing to climate crisis. But now they're trying to remove all the regulation, at least to hold the corporates accountable, at least the semblance of accountability. But now they're trying to remove everything, and now there's an increased attack and targeting of the communities and civil society who are resisting this kind of push for critical minerals. So I think that's a huge challenge at this point of time. And yeah, so I would end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jiten. I think I will back to you again for follow-up question. So I will pass to Carola.
Well, thank you so much. Maybe going a little bit backwards in history, we have to say that 81 years have passed from the creation of the World Bank and the IMF, and the challenges have changed. They have been established to recover global north countries after the Second World War, and we are facing a different environmental crisis now, and they are not really helping. For example, MDBs, like the World Bank and other multilateral development banks, should be really helping developing countries, but and they have been called to have an important role mobilizing climate finance, for example, or finance for development. But this has been questioned because, as you mentioned, they have been funding mining, they have been funding fossil fuel industries, extractive industries, and the challenges are getting worse, and they are really not adjusting. And we have been analyzing, for example, the quality of climate finance they are providing in the case of the World Bank, the MDBs. And we can see that, well, most of them, of course, are loans, but we have seen also that most of these loans are non-concessional loans. That means they have not good conditions, interest rates, time for payment. So this is not helping countries that are already highly indebted. And we are highly indebted. 60 countries in the world are already facing a debt crisis. So giving them more loans, non-concessional loans, is not going to help. Other thing that we see is that, of course, they are pushing for more critical mining supply in the world. And they are using the same strategy, the risking. They are using public funding to de-risk the investment of private sector. And that is the main instrument or mechanism they use. And of course, we know that could lead to different risks, as Jiten was saying, that benefits the private sector, the investors, but in many times they harm the people, the communities, the local communities that are receiving the negative social and environmental impacts of these activities. They are not receiving really the profits or the benefits of this kind of industries, and we are replicating a very unfair system. And for LATINDADD, for example, the energy transition must be just, must be inclusive, must be popular, and that means to change the idea of energy as a commodity, but as a fundamental right of people. It should not deepen extractivism in our countries, but we can clearly see it's happening with lithium, cobalt, and what is going on right now. It should not undermine the right of the population to food sovereignty and water security. And some of these industries, for example, the lithium industry, depending on the technology, needs a lot of water. For example, that is developing a lot of conflict in countries like mine. Bolivia has a lot of lithium reserve, and communities are very worried about how this water, which is getting scarce because climate change, now it's going to be used in this mining, critical mining sector, and it's not going to be provided for their communities. And we also see that it should not deprive communities for their territory, not generate environmental and social impacts. Right now, as Jiten was saying, it is happening, and it should not be reduced to changing the energy matrix from fossil fuels to renewable. It should not perpetuate or replicate the injustices of current energy system, but we can clearly see this is happening. And as I mentioned at the beginning, debt is a neocolonial instrument to condition our countries to this role of more extraction, because to repay these debts, we need to keep extracting, and now these are the minerals that we are moving to, the critical minerals. And that is deepening extractivism in our countries, is not really helping us to really diversify our economies. And we can also criticize the governance of these institutions. Who are the ones ruling the IMF, the World Bank? Are the climate debtors, the ecological debtors, the ones that are creating the environmental problems and which are not really solving them. They are not fulfilling their commitments. They are not providing fair climate finance. They are giving 2/3 in loans. So it is really unfair, and yeah, it's something that we need really to demand and really show to the world what is happening.
Yeah, I agree with your point, Carola and Jiten. And as we for Indonesia context, also we are a developing country, and also we have critical minerals specific in nickel. And now we see how the financial institution, they are coming to our government, try to approaching them and giving some loan mechanism that they are creating is as the how the banks can helping Indonesia to achieving our target to be a developed country, and then how we can maximize our critical mineral. But at the same times also we know that I think we need to leveraging how the banks safeguards, and also they are just replay as, oh, we have safeguards. It's like ADB has safeguard, the World Bank has safeguard, and another MDBs they have safeguard. But do you think this safeguard is really strong enough to address that what I heard, what already we facing right now, specific in the community front line? I think I will go first with Carola.
Well, I don't think they are enough. They have these safeguards, but they are not really implementing them in a way that is securing the benefit of the communities, and that is something that we have seen. For example, we have analyzed some projects funded by MDBs in Latin America, and we have seen that there is not a good indicator, for example, to really see how these safeguards are being fulfilled, or how the gender perspective is being integrated in the projects, or really how women, for example, are being benefited from these projects. And yeah, it is just, I think, something that exists, but it's not really being implemented, and that's something that needs to change. And of course, as I was mentioning, if you use this public money to de-risk the private sector, you're only going in this logic of capitalism, where you want to just ensure the profit and really don't focus on the social impact and the environmental impact. And yeah, they call it green, but I really don't know if it is really green. I really have a lot of skepticism about that.
Yeah, so do I. Jiten, you have one point?
There's a huge concern with the safeguard policies of these MDBs, the IFIs, because the safeguard itself is weak in a way, because the safeguard provision to hold the corporates accountable, even the banks themselves accountable, I think that's a huge problem, because we already see that the IFC, the World Bank, the ADB, and so many other banks, they jointly finance mining projects, several mining projects already, not just a critical mineral. In across Asia, there are so many examples, in Mongolia, even in my part of the world. So a lot of them are financing together, and there is complete unaccountability, so the application of safeguard itself is a huge challenge. The provision, the contents of the safeguard is a huge challenge. It's very weak. It doesn't recognize the rights of the community. It doesn't have strong language to hold the corporations and IFIs accountable. And even the enforcement of the safeguard, I think that's a huge, huge, huge concern, because when it comes to the enforcement, there is a weak implementation and enforcement of those safeguards. Even if whatever safeguard semblance of provisions are there, and that's a huge concern. And another concern is country system. Say for example, a lot of the safeguard application, it relies on the country system, for example. But the challenge to the country system is the laws are getting liberalized, the laws are getting diluted. In the case of India, for example, all the mining laws are getting diluted, all the laws on energy is getting diluted. So the laws are more favoring the corporations, increasing the privilege of the financial institutions. There is more support for the for the direct investment, from the private sector, from the corporations, from even the developed countries. And so, which means the reference, the application of the country system, I think that's also very weak, no?
Yeah, I totally agree with your both of your points. And just a little bit about the country system. And I think for the global south, I think from our government it's very weak. Our for our environmental safeguard, our policies itself is very weak.
I just have a short point. Can I
Yes,
add a short point relevant to the safeguard? So on
yes,
the one hand, the country laws are diluted. On the one hand, there is inadequate provisions for accountability, when it comes to safeguard. But I think this is also associated with the shrinking civil society space. So like in many countries, even in Asia, even in my own country, what you are seeing is there is increased repression and closing restriction on the civil society and the community rights. And I think that has to be taken into consideration, because now it's extremely difficult even for the communities to speak out. So the repression is increasing, so which means the reprisal. So for many of the IFI projects, the infrastructure and several other MDB projects, the issue of reprisal is one of the big concerns. So now with all this critical minerals mining coming up, with all the further liberalization of law, deregulation of law, so which means there is a policy vacuum to actually support the community who are affected by the MDB funding of this kind of extractive critical mineral mining. No, and I think that's another concern that we need to take into account. Something that goes along with the dilution of policy at the country level, and also the weakening of the safeguard or inadequate safeguard provision. Thank you.
yes. Thank you, Jiten. I have another question to Carola. I'm just wondering how the Bolivia government they are labeling for the critical mineral in your context. Is it they are put like strategy national plan? So that's why one of the reason that's why they are putting like special task forces or special military that's to protect it or
Well, critical minerals are considered like strategic for the country. And Bolivia had a project that seemed to be interesting at the beginning in 2009, because they didn't want foreign investment to be part of the project, lithium project. They wanted the Bolivian government to have their own public company to exploit the lithium, and to only invite foreign investment to industrialize the lithium. But that didn't work because we didn't have any experience. And yeah, they have used a lot of public money and no results really. So it had led to a lot of conflict with the communities as well, because we didn't have really good results, only bad decisions. And now that Bolivia is facing a really terrible economic crisis, they are seeing lithium as the salvation, the silver bullet, because we are running out of gas. Gas was our main export sector. And yeah, due to bad decisions and bad public management, we are running out of gas too. And now they are seeing lithium as the salvation for the country. And I don't know how they are going to change for example, in the laws to invite more foreign investments. They are understanding it like that. And I'm sure we are going to change government very soon. We have elections next week, so we will have a new government, and it is very possible that they are going to ask the IMF, the MDBs for more loans to develop this kind of extractive sector. So there are a lot of risks if you don't consider these kind of basic things. You should consider how you are going to impact your local communities, how to really not use all the water that is really getting very scarce in this area that is that is facing a lot of water stress because of climate change. So I'm very worried because of these decisions, and they are seeing lithium as the big solution and the silver bullet uh, for our economic crisis. And I think it's not going to be the saver.
Yeah, that's very big concern, and finger crossed that for the upcoming election that will be getting a better result, and also the better government and policy for upcoming. Yeah. So uh, I'm just also wondering how the international finance institution getting involved in Manipur, India. Jiten, can you share with us how the MDBs they are getting involved in there and how they are very treating the communities?
Okay, so the IFIs are heavily involved in the infrastructure, which is very much, and also the power sector, energy sector, no, like in the rehabilitation of large hydropower project, for example, and then the road building, for example, and then also the infrastructure like the high voltage transmission and distribution line, because these are very much important for building large hydropower projects, no. In areas very close to my part of the world, what you're also seeing is the IFIs, the Asian Development Bank, the IFC, the European Investment Bank, and then multiple other financial intermediaries. They are also involved in the mining activity. So there is this case called Lafarge Mining. Lafarge is the French mining company, that operates this limestone and mining and funded by these MDBs. And that's where we find a lot of issues around the safeguard policy violation. We've written extensively. We work with the community, and then we also filed complaint with the IFC and even try to reach out to ADB. So we have a huge challenge in trying to seek accountability. Justice for the affected communities. No, so that's where the issues around the applicability of safeguard, effectiveness of the safeguard, the relevance of the safeguard, to country, everything comes up. But what matters at the end of the day is these projects funded by this IFI and this thing. It's a symbol of unaccountability. It's a symbol of plunder of people's land and resources. It's a symbol of violation of indigenous people's rights. And yeah, and also just want to relate to the previous concern around the minor critical mineral and the geopolitics in our part, because our region is also strategically located in a kind of tri-junction between South Asia, Southeast Asia, and even East Asia. So which means there's a huge competition of control of land resources, and also the specific areas, the critical where there are critical minerals. So which means we are seeing a huge interplay of geopolitical competition: US, China, India, Japan, Korea, European countries. So that's all converging in my part of the world. So which means there's a huge complexity, and then the use of proxy force, the use of direct military collaboration. There's increased collaboration between the countries, US and India, for example, and then to promote cooperation on critical minerals mining and the infrastructure development. And ultimately, these are very much part and parcel of promoting conflict in the region, and we are seeing the impact of this, and we are directly willing in conflict. And we share border with Myanmar and Bangladesh, and then so these are all regional, and part of the conflict is very much to do with trying to gain access to the river, to the critical minerals, and yeah. So that's a competition that already complicate the pattern of conflict and tensions in my part of the world.
Yeah, thank you, Jiten, for sharing, and then how we can see and look how the MDBs has play a role in the complexity issue in Manipur. So now, this is my final question. That we know that in international financing institution, financing and policy conditionally enforce extractivism and dependency often the cause of the people rights and sovereignty. But resistance is alive, as both of you also sharing with us in the first early this session, and the alternatives are already being built from the ground up. So my question is, what feminists people power alternative can directly resist international finance institution extractive model and build real resources sovereignty and transition from the ground up? I think for this question I will go first with Carola.
Well, I think it's important to resist, but also to confront the system. And we need to get involved in the negotiations that could lead to a more democratic and fair international financial system. That's why we have been participating, for example, and very involved in the fourth conference for finance for development in Seville this year, because we thought that was the space where we could really ask and demand for more fair economic global governance, in which our countries from the global south have also more power in the decision-making process. We need to push for a new development paradigm, the paradigm that put people and communities in the center of the decisions and not profit. That should really change. And I think we need to advocate for that. We need to be part of the campaigns. We need to be part of the negotiations. We need to be and approach the decision makers, because otherwise we are really not going to have good results. And I think that is important. That's why we are part of the different processes related to the UN. We are part of different grassroots movements and groups working in depth and climate, working in the IMF and climate and different spaces where we are trying to strategize how to change the system and to request and demand in the different spaces more concessional and long-term climate finance from MDBs with faster and direct window of access for non-governmental stakeholders, especially vulnerable groups, not only, and to change this approach of only the risking to benefit the private sector. MDBs should provide more public grants and technical assistance, not on, for adaptation, which is something that we need. And that is something that when we talk only about energy transition and critical minerals, is more focused on mitigation, which is receiving most of the money, and money is not really going to the sectors that need it, for example, adaptation. We need to change this idea of debt sustainability. For the IMF, debt sustainability is what they are looking for, but we really need to push for life sustainability. We really need to make them see the importance of caring for life. And we also need to change some indicators. For example, the World Bank has established some indicators related to your national income that, for example, puts all the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean as middle income or high income countries. And that limits us to really receive concessional money, concessional funding. And that is very, very limited only to your income and doesn't really reflect your vulnerabilities, your environmental, social vulnerabilities. So we need new multidimensional vulnerability assessment of our countries. We need to reform the financial system. We need to lead it to a more democratic and fair financial system where our countries in the global south have more power, more voice in the decision making, considering also what I was mentioning at the beginning, that right now these institutions are ruled by the countries that have created and have caused the climate and environmental problems in the world. And they are not really responding to that. They are just promoting false solutions, more debt as a neocolonial instrument to keep us conditioned to this extractive sector and model of development. We need more transparency and no harming projects funded from IFIs, nor more fossil fuel funding from MDBs, and nor more of this kind of extractive sector promotion like critical minerals and mining in our countries. And we are also pushing for different other solutions. For example, we acknowledge that the world needs to transition to renewables. We need to do that. But we acknowledge also that in the face of climate justice, we need also different approaches. For example, we need debt relief for countries in need. This is the year of the Jubilee the church and the civil society is pushing for that. Because if you cancel the debt of countries that are already highly indebted, you can free up some public resources to make countries, to help countries have a sovereign decision about how to use these resources in a sovereign way. We need to reform the current climate finance architecture, which is not really helping us, which is giving us more debt, which is so ineffective that it takes sometimes 5 years for a project to be approved by the Green Climate Fund, and that is not really helping our countries. We really need to reform the international financial system. We need to redirect also all the money, the public money that is going to wars, to genocides, to fossil fuels, to the climate agenda, because otherwise we are not really get the funding we need to make this transition fair and to include the people. And we need to really not replicate and perpetuate these approaches, extractive and unfair approaches that we have been living before. So we need to change the logic and the narratives as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Carola. Jiten?
Please support the sharing from Carola. What is really, really important is to strengthen our resistance within the community level and fostering solidarity and unity and strengthening the resistance is extremely important, because there is huge when it comes to critical minerals and the push for this kind of unsustainable and destructive and harmful initiatives. One of the major impact is dividing the community and disintegrating the community, misinformation, use of proxy force and fear, threats, all sort of. So that's also one of the reasons why it's extremely important that we unify, extend solidarity, build our struggles, and I think that is extremely important. And secondly, to do that is what is also important is also to learn from successful struggles and also ongoing struggles, and also learn from the challenges of ongoing struggles. And I think that's where we can build stronger struggles. And the beauty of people coming together, organizing community, everyone coming together is it really helps to strengthen and diversify our strategy, to ensure our strategies are effective, so because there are so many examples across the world, even in the part where we live, where we could stop mining, or where we can fully assert people's right, because that involves a consistent and also collective effort, support from unity from the community, and also support and solidarity from all over, and and strengthening those movements. And I think that is actually important. And fully agree with what Carola said. In addition to the strengthening the community resistance, or solidarity, what is extremely important is to challenge this neoliberal agenda and the neoliberal policies, aggressively pursued by all the developed countries, capitalist countries, and which is also very much associated with increased militarism, and I think that is something that we really, really need to challenge, and to challenge that again, we again need the solidarity, support, unity, and collective effort of all of us, and I think that is actually important, and finally, what is actually important when it comes to asserting people-powered energy transition is also to what is most important is to further the importance of recognizing the people's rights, the right over the land and territory, people's right to consent, people's right to self-determination over the land resources, self-determination over the future, the right to not just participation, but also the rightful participation. And I think that is extremely, extremely important. And also to recognize a development process, a just energy transition process, they recognize the importance of alternatives and defining alternatives. And I think that is actually important. And what is again most important is also to hold the corporations, the multinational companies, the financial institutions, and even authoritarian states who are responsible for all the harm and the climate crisis, to hold them accountable. I think that is extremely important. And to achieve this, I would re-emphasize the importance of strengthening our solidarity, support, unity, and collective struggles. And long live for collective struggle and
long live for the communities. So that's the final question, and I will try to wrap up for this episode. As we know, the international finance institution might present themselves as the engine of development and sustainability, but at the same time, that also has a role play to financing larger scale activism, and that's the evidence. And we need demand from the bank, from this institution. We need more transparency and also strengthening our commitments, and also debt safeguard, more inclusive and transparent. But as our speaker remind us, we are not powerless. It's time for all of us to strengthening our resistance and solidarity, and hand in hand to support each other, because we live in the same world, and now in the global south we're facing the same problem, and this is time for us to be more gather as the big voices.